Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. I am so glad you're joining me today. We're going to put on our historical detective hats and investigate a pretty massive question. What does it actually mean to be a U.S. citizen? We're going to dive into exactly what the Constitution originally said, what the 14th Amendment changed, and the very real gap between a promise written on paper and a right actually experienced in reality. And to do this right, we're relying entirely on primary sources from the National Archives and the Library of Congress. So, let's just jump right in.
Section 1. The Citizenship Misconception.
So here's a question for you. When we think about citizenship today, we usually just lump all our rights together into one big automatic package. But does being a citizen automatically guarantee your right to vote? Just take a second and really think about your answer. I mean, most of us naturally assume, right? Like, if you have citizenship, boom, you immediately get to cast a ballot. It just seems completely obvious. Well, let's see what the historical evidence actually has to say about that.
To get the real answer, we've got to go straight to the source material. This quote right here is directly from Article 1, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. It says, "The times, places, and manner of holding elections shall be prescribed in each state." Now, this is a massive misconception check for us. You see, the framers of the Constitution didn't actually set up a single set of national voting rules. Nope. Instead, they left the whole shebang, all the details of voting, completely up to the individual states. And as our sources point out, leaving election control to the states unfortunately led to some really unfair voting practices. Initially, only white men with property were routinely permitted to vote. So, looking at the history, early citizenship absolutely did not mean an automatic right to vote.
Section 2. Defining 14th Amendment rights. Okay, fast forward a bit. After the Civil War, the United States enters the Reconstruction era, and Congress decides they really need to fix some of these glaring inequalities, so they pass the 14th Amendment in 1868. Now, this amendment is essentially built on three major pillars. Here's the first one: citizenship. The text states incredibly clearly that citizenship is granted to, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States. And according to the National Archives, this explicitly granted citizenship to formerly enslaved people. Guys, this was a literal game changer. It was a monumental shift in officially defining exactly who belonged to the nation.
Let's look at the second pillar and see how this builds. This is the Due Process Clause. The amendment commands that no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Basically, this means you are absolutely entitled to fair legal procedures. But the really crucial point to remember here is that before this amendment, people mostly just looked to the federal government to protect those rights. The 14th Amendment stepped in and explicitly applied these protections to the state governments as well.
And finally, we have the third pillar: equal protection. The text demands that no state can deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Think of this as the constitutional promise that the law literally must apply equally to everyone, no matter who they are. It was specifically designed to be this incredibly powerful guarantee of civil and legal rights for Black citizens, and eventually for all citizens.
Section 3. Guarantee versus lived reality.
Now, having a rule beautifully written down in a document over in Washington, D.C. is one thing, right? But what happens when you actually walk out your front door? That is an entirely different story. There was some intense friction between those legal guarantees and the lived reality. What we see are the lofty promises of the 14th Amendment, granting citizenship and equal protection, crashing headfirst into systematic disenfranchisement and state-level exclusion. So even though African Americans were absolutely granted the rights of citizenship in 1868, our sources make it completely clear that this did not automatically translate into the actual ability to vote.
And because states still had the power to control elections, a lot of citizens found themselves just completely locked out of the voting booth. Entire specific groups had to gear up and engage in these sustained, often generations-long campaigns just to secure their constitutional rights. African Americans faced systemic barriers well after the 14th and 15th Amendments. Women fought for over 70 years before the 19th Amendment was finally passed. Native Americans faced literal centuries of struggle before acquiring full U.S. citizenship and voting protections. And youth, specifically between the ages of 18 and 21, had to advocate incredibly hard for the 26th Amendment. So as you can see, having that guarantee on paper, that was really just the beginning of their fight.
Section 4. Evidence-based student check.
Let's see if we can connect the historical dots here based on what we've covered. Based on the sources we just reviewed, why couldn't African Americans vote immediately after the 14th Amendment granted them citizenship? Think back to what we learned about the original Constitution just a minute ago and who actually controlled the elections. I'll give you a second to lock in your answer.
Okay, did you get it?
The source-backed answer is that states systematically turned black voters away from polling places. Remember our early misconception check. The Constitution gave the states the power to prescribe the times, places, and manner of elections. So even with the 14th Amendment officially declaring African Americans as citizens, state-level authorities still managed to find loopholes to deny them the ballot. That huge federal guarantee just clashed horribly with local state enforcement.
Section 5, Final Lesson Recap.
Let's distill everything we've uncovered in this explainer down into 3 definitive takeaways. Step 1. The original Constitution left the details of voting and elections entirely up to individual states, and that led to widespread inequalities. Step 2. The 14th Amendment tried to fix this by promising citizenship, due process, and equal protection on paper, officially including formerly enslaved people. And Step 3. A legal guarantee absolutely does not equal instant reality. Citizens, from African Americans to women to Native Americans, had to fight, petition, and struggle for decades to actually force the system to honor those paper promises.
Which brings us to our final thought. If a right is guaranteed on paper, whose responsibility is it to ensure that promise actually becomes a reality for everyone? As our sources show us, the true legacy of the 14th Amendment wasn't just the legal words it added to the Constitution. It was the determined, ongoing struggle of everyday citizens who demanded that those words actually mean something in their daily lives. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing your sources, and I'll leave you to ponder that final, powerful question.